Up next, we have Hari Kondabolu. Hari is a Brooklyn-based comedian who was discovered in Seattle at the HBO Comedy Festival while he was working as an immigrant rights organizer. He's appeared on television many times, and he recently released the album Waiting for 2042.
Thank you for your polite applause that ended over there. Okay. It's nice to be able to perform at home, just because I travel all over the world to do comedy, which is an incredible privilege. But I don't really like the long lines and bureaucracy of immigration and customs. I've always wanted to go to Australia, but apparently in Australia it's really tricky because they don't let you bring in fruit or plants into their country because they're worried that if foreign bodies enter Australia, they'll kill people and destroy the environment, right? Which is a very fair point, because if you ask the Aborigines, they would tell you that sometimes foreign bodies enter Australia and they kill people, destroy the environment, right? For those of you who didn't know, the theme of my set tonight will be colonialism, which is why I'm speaking only in English. I was performing in Aarhus, Denmark, about 3 years ago. I think it's fair to assume that was the low point of my career. I didn't know Aarhus was a place that existed till I got there. And the show didn't go particularly well, and a man got up in the middle of my show and he yelled, "Hey, go back to America!" Which was incredible. Because I've been told to go back to so many countries, and never to America. I've been told to go back to Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, whatever country this nation is bombing, I'm told to go back there at like the worst time to go back. So I landed, I travel constantly, so I landed at LaGuardia a couple of years ago, and my dad usually picks me up at the airport in Queens, where I grew up, which is sweet. And I get off the plane, get my bags, I'm walking towards the car when this lady runs in front of me and gets into the back of our car, right? Now, that of course is strange, because that's never supposed to happen, right? So I opened the door and I said, "Excuse me, miss," and then she says, "Look, I got here first, maybe you should walk a little faster." At this point, it becomes clear that she thinks she's in a cab and my father is a cab driver, because apparently she's so racist, she looks at the color of the driver before looking at the color of the car. Well, clearly he has the markings of the servant class. Drive me. About 5 seconds after I realized what happened, she realized what happened. And I know she realized what happened because she scooted over to the left-hand passenger seat, opened the door, and started running, right? And then maybe she killed herself. And then maybe she killed herself. I don't know for sure because I don't have the privilege of knowing how white guilt works, right? Is it a Richter scale? Is it 1 to 10? If slavery's like a 10, this is like a 4. I don't know how sensitive she is to a 4. Some of you feeling a 3 off the joke, apparently. I was frustrated not only with the situation, but with my reaction to it, right? Because I blew an amazing opportunity. Because what I should have done, I should have opened that door, and I should have said, "Excuse me, miss, you want to split this cab?" Because if we split that cab, all sorts of fascinating questions get asked. Questions like, is it kidnapping if we take her where she wanted to go? Is it ransom if she pays a reasonable fare for such a trip? Right. Good, you've gone from cold to lukewarm. Very nice. This has been interesting, and I still have 5 minutes. Okay. Is this mandatory for you all, or you chose to be here? I don't know, because this feels like an NPR audience. You're like, yes, this is interesting. Yes, your poetry is comical to me, young man. Very nice. Put Brian back on. No, that's not how this works. It's very strange growing up in this city, and I travel all over the world, and people will say, "Hey man, where are you from?" And I'll tell them with pride, "I'm from Queens, New York." And then they'll say, "No, I mean, where are you really from?" Which of course is code for, "No, I mean, why aren't you white? I noticed your skin was a different color than mine. Why? Why, you have pigment. Why is this? Pigment? I see that. Look, let me reason with you. I'm a race detective. And I'm here to solve the case of what the fuck are you? Why is this that way?" It frustrates me because I'm being judged based on the color of my skin and not by my most important qualities, which of course are the softness and smoothness of my skin, right? Traits I have carefully cultivated with the extensive use of cocoa butter. Yeah, I use cocoa butter. Just the other day, I went to the supermarket to get some more cocoa butter when I noticed the cocoa butter had been moved to the ethnic needs section of my supermarket. I, of course, was confused by this, right? Because I saw ethnic needs, and I'm like, great. End of police brutality, more access to health care, more educational opportunities. Finally, the day has arrived in America. I'm surprised it's at the supermarket. It wasn't. It was just shampoo and cocoa butter. Nothing had changed in America. I've been using cocoa butter a couple of years now. I love it because it makes me smell like chocolate. And I love chocolate, of course, for political reasons, right? Because the average American in this country is still depicted as white. We see that in TV, we see that in film, we see that in the news media. The average American is seen as white. That's why I like chocolate. Because when you first think of chocolate, you think of something brown. And if you think of white chocolate first, then you're a fucking racist. I mean, honestly. Who thinks of white chocolate in that situation? And that brings up the bigger issue. Why do we need white chocolate to begin with? It's chocolate, man. It's great. Why would you need to make white chocolate? Do you love the taste of chocolate, but can't stand looking at it? Well, then try some white chocolate. It's from the people that brought you white Jesus. Now, as you can imagine, New York City, this joke does not work in most of the country, right? I was doing this joke in a small town in rural Pennsylvania. It wasn't a complete failure, and I know the show wasn't a complete failure because I am still alive, right? But it didn't go well, and after the show, a man came up to me and he said, hey, I just want you to know, I don't like your white Jesus joke. I knew we had an issue because I've always considered that my white chocolate joke, right? So clearly a fundamental difference of opinion. So I went up to him and I said, what issue did you have with my joke? And he's like, I don't agree with you. I think Jesus was white. I'm like, that's fine. You can believe whatever you want to believe. I don't believe in gravity. But you don't see me flying, right? Like, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but the facts are the facts. Both Jesus' parents are from the Middle East. For all intents and purposes, they were brown. Two brown people cannot create a fucking Swedish tennis player. You can't look like that. Why does Jesus look like Bjorn Borg for no reason? And I explained this to him, and he's like, look, I'm not an idiot, which was debatable at that point. Look, I'm not an idiot. I understand what you're saying, but here's the thing. Jesus' mother, Mary, she was from the Middle East. She can be brown. But his father wasn't Joseph, right? His father was God. And God, as we all know, is white. Now, I should have ended the conversation at this point, but I didn't, because I wanted to know how this future joke was going to end. And I said, you do realize what you're saying is ridiculous, right? Mixing brown and white doesn't create white. Any child or racist could tell you that. I mean, that's the way this country has historically worked. But let's say I was to agree with you that somehow a brown woman and a white man was able to create a white Jesus. I will only agree that Jesus Christ is white if you agree that Barack Obama is as white as Jesus Christ. And after presenting that man with his own logic, I think it's pretty fair to assume that this man was so racist that he no longer believed in God. So, mission accomplished, right? The country's changing very quickly. People, of course, are freaking out about this, demographic shifts. I was watching CNN, which was my mistake, and they were interviewing this woman in Arizona about immigration. They asked her what she thought, and she's like, look, we're just trying to bring this country back to the way it used to be. The way it used to be. Lady, you're in Arizona. It used to be Mexico. Like, what are you talking about? And the way Mexican people are discussed in this country is ridiculous. Like, what are the stereotypes you hear? Mexicans are lazy. But you also hear, Mexicans steal all the jobs. How do those two things work together? How can you be lazy and still magically steal all the jobs? Well, that's easy. Some Mexicans are lazy, and some Mexicans work really hard. Right. Like all people. Like all human beings. If your argument is that Mexicans are like all human beings, well, then you're just a really shitty racist. That's some piss-poor racism. Maybe you should get out of the racism game. Or hire a Mexican person to be racist for you, because you couldn't handle that. Even in New York City, man. Again, I grew up in Queens, New York, which is the most diverse place in the world. And even here, you see racism. Like, I grew up with people from all over the world, right? So many different cultures. All that means is that we are exposed to many different cultures so we can hurt each other on a deeper and more specific level, right? That's how racism in New York can work, right? I was in a restaurant with my mother a couple of years ago. I was overhearing the conversation at the table next to me. This man was angry that the waiter was speaking Chinese, right? It should be noted at this point, we were at a Chinese restaurant. If there's one place where you'd think a waiter should be allowed to speak Chinese, it's at a Chinese restaurant. You don't think it's humiliating enough that he has to pretend sesame chicken is a real Chinese dish? And of course, General Tso's chicken, named after that famous general, Tso, who died valiantly fighting to get the seeds off the chicken, it's the same dish. Why do we pay more for seeds, right? I was doing this joke once, and a person came up to me after the show and said, that joke's really funny, but you should know Chinese isn't a language. It's either Mandarin or Cantonese. That's true, but I don't think that was this dude's issue. I don't think this dude was like, Cantonese, I thought we were at a Mandarin place. I'm classically trained in Mandarin. What's this Cantonese bullshit? I'm being cheated right now. I don't think he was a culturally competent bigot, is the point I'm saying, right? I was overhearing the conversation further. This man makes a brilliant argument about why English should be the national language of this country. Here's his argument. When in Rome, you do what the Romans do. That was it. That was the whole strong thesis, strong supporting information. He used a cliche, which frustrated me, because I have really strong opinions as well, but I try to justify them with facts and logic, right? I don't use cliches. Like, I'm pro-choice. I have really strong opinions about why I'm pro-choice. But you don't see me up here saying, hey, I'm pro-choice, so don't count your chickens before they're hatched. Really? That's all I have to offer you? That insensitive cliche? When in Rome, you do what the Romans do doesn't even make any sense, because Rome was an empire. You didn't go to Rome. Rome came to you. I have one more thing, then I'm going to leave. Doesn't have to do with you. I've just met my contractual obligations. This country is not dealing with demographic changes very well. According to census figures in the media that reports them, 2042 is the year when white people will be the minority in this country. And I know this because the media keeps reporting it, because they keep freaking out about this, that white people will be 49% in 2042. And I don't know if there are any white people here that are freaking out about this. I'd be surprised because you're in New York. But, like, don't freak out, white people. You were the minority when you came to this country. And things seem to have worked out for you. Right? But here's the bigger point. Here's the more important point. 49% white doesn't make you the minority, right? That's not how math works, right? 49% white is only the minority if you think the other 51% is exactly the same. Well, it's 49% white people and 51% you people. That's really the only way that works. Because that 51% is not a united front, right? And it's easy to figure this out. Just ask a black guy and a Korean guy what happens when a black guy walks into the Korean guy's store, right? That interaction might not be pleasant, right? It might not be like, hey, teammate. How's it going, teammate? Pretty excited, you? 2042, am I right? Yeah. It's probably not what's happening, right? There's some historic tension there. And some of you might be thinking, well, Harry, you're saying that 51% is not exactly the same, but you're assuming that all white people are the same. Yes. No. I'm obviously joking, right? Because race is a construct. It's not real, right? These numbers are ways to divide us. These labels are ways to divide us. It's not real. There was a time when the Irish weren't white, when the Jews weren't white, when the Italians weren't white. These are all fake things. They're not real. And for the people of color, for the three of you that are in this room, you know this because when you ask white people what their cultural heritage is, they never just say white, right? They give you a math equation, right? I'm a third German and a fourth Irish and 1/16th Welsh and 1/40th Native American for college applications. It's like, damn, Steve, all these years I thought you were just white. Thank you very much.